Hey, g'day people, it's Matt here from Matt Carve. So today we're going to carve a wood spirit. It's going to be in parts. The first part is kind of like blocking out, and I will show you what we're going to aim for today. So we're going to aim to get to this point here, and what I'm going to sort of cover is how to get your proportions right, and also maybe like a lot of concentration on the nose and the transitions that come out from the nose. There's quite a few. There's the one coming out sort of like from the eye around the cheek, and the one at the bottom of that nasal bit there that comes out, and the one at the top that goes into the forehead. All of these kind of transitions really set you up for a good wood spirit. Okay, so when it comes to proportions for beginners, a good method is to actually print off a picture. It doesn't have to be of a wood spirit or anything like that. It could just be like a general person. They don't have to have a beard or anything like that, because essentially what we're interested in is sort of like the length of the nose, the eyes, and the width of the head, and maybe the forehead and the top of the head if you're going to carve the top of the head as well. So the first kind of thing that you want to do is sort of like make sure it sort of like fits onto your piece of wood. And the good thing about this is if you want to carve the width, then you make sure the width is the right size for the piece of wood as well. And so there's no sort of like, even if it doesn't, it's not going to end up looking like this guy. It's going to end up like looking like a wood spirit, but we're just getting in the proportions. So we're not copying this or anything like that. It's just sort of like the distance between the eyes, distance of the sort of like the head. Okay, so this image of this guy is from Canva. I've got a membership with them. But the first thing we want to do is, well, you can just print it off Google or whatever, but I have to kind of like print it off somewhere where I don't get like copyright strikes from. So the first thing you want to do is fold it in half, and so we can get the proportions of the nose lengths and all of that quite easily onto the wood. Now we're going to carve into the corner of the piece of wood today, which is always easier because you don't have to go so far back to get the nose profile. Okay, so I'm going to carve the top of the head, so I want to line that up with the top of the piece of wood, and then it's just a matter of sort of like looking down, and there's the bridge of the nose. You kind of want to go there, maybe where the sort of the forehead kind of goes into the bridge, the complete bottom of the nose, and also the tip of the nose. So what I mean by that is the nose there, and the tip of the nose is sort of that part right there, and the bottom of the nose is that point below it. And you can also use a profile picture of somebody to give you a general idea. Now if you wanted to take dimensions of the profile with the front part as well, what you kind of need to do is have the same person at the same size so they kind of correlate. So that's the kind of like bridge of the nose there, and so that'll go out like that, and we're going to put that in very shortly. Okay, so when you carve, you're going to lose those lines, so what you can do is just get a set square and extend those lines to the side of the block so you will know where they are, and so when you carve away, you're not going to lose where those lines are. And a great burr for blocking out is the kutzall flame burr. It's just a real general kind of burr that will take away a lot of material and quite easy to control as well. So there we are, we've just put a sort of like the bottom of the nose and sort of putting in the forehead a little bit there as well. And sort of what we're going to do now is we're just going to take that back. So really what I'm working on here is just the profile of the nose. So I'm going back quite far here. Now these kind of depths that I'm going to probably aren't going to be my final depths. They're just sort of like trying to work out how it looks, and I might alter these as I go along. Maybe, well, I can only ever take away, remember that, so you sort of want to take away a little bit and have a look at it, and then take away a little bit more. And a good idea is, so your nose is not pointy, is actually to get rid of that part right at the end. And what I mean by that is sort of like that area there is quite flat. Well, is flatter than the rest. So what we want to do, because that's quite pointy at the moment, is we just want to take it back a little bit, which means we might have to sort of take that bridge back further, but that's okay because we've got a lot of wood to play with. And so essentially I will just flatten the top of the nose out at this point, and so it's not pointy. So that's looking pretty good. And what you kind of want to do with blocking out is really giving yourself big general shapes that you can still alter a little bit. So you don't want it to completely right down to the final kind of depths and all of that. You could do that when you become like a super expert at carving wood spirits, and you can just go down to a certain level and you know it's going to be correct. So what I'm doing here is I'm just flattening out the forehead. And I'm not going to completely flatten the forehead, I'm just going above the nose a little bit flatter to sort of give me that general shape. And so you can sort of still see there that the nose is not sort of like sticking out enough. So we'll just take this forehead back a bit and maybe work on that bridge a little bit more. Okay, so and it's also a great idea to put that center line back in. With any kind of carvings, you want to put a center line in. It just makes things so much easier. And at this point, we're going to be looking at transferring some of the proportions from the photo to the wood carving. I think probably if I was doing it, I'd probably sit about there. But what we can do also is use a compass or a ruler and just sort of like take the width of that nose up there and work it out. Now, I'm not saying when you're carving is to go really sort of like to those 2 points, but it's sort of giving us a general idea. So we're going to sort of like move in on those 2 points as we carve. And you can do the bottom of the nose as well if you want. What I tend to do is I'll put these points in and I will go quite generous on them, just so when I'm shaping it out, then it'll be quite generous. Then I'll narrow it down as I get those sort of like nasal passages right. Flares or nasal nears, one of those. So you can just draw in the nose there, and so we've got something to carve to now. And what you might be asking yourself is, are we trying to produce a realistic carving here? Well, the answer is maybe yes and no. What we're trying to do is just try to understand the proportions, and the best way to do this is to be a little bit pedantic at the start, so we get to understand how the nose goes on and all of that. So when we start sort of like freestyling things, we've sort of got that general idea, because if you go straight into freestyling kind of things, we sort of miss out the rules, and then you're going to keep on repeating bad habits. Okay, so we're back to using that flame burr, and we are just sort of like roughing out around the nose and maybe a little bit into the eyes as well, just sort of taking it back a little bit. You don't want to go too deep in the eyes just yet, because if you're going to put in an eyeball, it's got to have some wood there to do that. But sort of just getting in those sort of like general shapes. And you could use the flame burr like I'm doing here, or a sphere burr if you haven't got a flame burr. Okay, so we've sort of got that shaped in. I'm just going to show you this one, sort of like in a comparison. It's kind of like about maybe a little tiny bit smaller, just fractionally. Okay, so unless you're carving a wood spirit without eyes, you've got to be very careful not to take out too much material in here. So I'll probably like leave that material there now and sort of like carve around it. And just so I've got something to play with. So what I will do now is I think I will sort of start narrowing this out, and I will carve down here like that, just to sort of like give these kind of like this idea here. So you can sort of go round there and down there like that. Okay, so you can sort of see me, I'm sort of like narrowing down this part mainly. We've got to be careful with this part because the nasal kind of flares are going to be in there. So I tend to concentrate on this part and then try and work this out. There you can sort of see that going around the eyes. You see this is going to have to come back a little bit. It's just a little bit too far over, so you probably take that a little bit back. It's sort of like a real game of sort of just sort of like taking things back one and the other. But you want to keep this point kind of the same and adjust these points here. And just be aware of where the eye sits as well. So because I'm going to carve eyes in there, I kind of want to keep those kind of in there and not take too much material out. We can sort of see that on there, sort of see I've left that material in there so I can carve the eye later. And if you wanted to sort of like work out how wide the eyes are, we can do that here. We just do like a measurement. Just go to the outside of his eyes. Yeah, see, they look really narrow, but this nose needs to come in further. So that's okay. Okay, so you can sort of see I've taken that back there and that's sticking out quite nicely now. So when we're concentrating on the end of the nose, we've got to be aware, we kind of want to keep that kind of quite flat there. It's the center line, just like to draw that in. I think the nasal bits like going in there. I usually put them in a little bit too wide and then I will take them back a little bit. So I'll probably carve this down a little bit here and then we will put the nasal parts in. Okay, so I've just taken that back. I've just got to be aware that the cheeks are going to go in there. So what I mean by that is those cheeks there. So that will be coming out from the eye like that. But we've got a lot of leeway, we've got a lot of wood, so we can always take this back a little bit further, then we take the nose back a little bit further. So it's just a game of playing around really, see what works. But here I'm going to show you sort of like how to put, when I say putting in the nose, I tend to put in the nose very gradually and sort of like refine things as I go. So here you can sort of see it's not like really prominent. It's like your nasal kind of thing is not going to be like bang, bang, bang. Like what I mean by that is then that bit there is not going to be like this. It's going to be more like that, I guess. Yeah. So what we need to do is we need to first sort of like get that part sort of sorted out. Well, not that part there. So when we're sort of like carving this part, what I tend to do is I tend to go down like this and just leave all this wood kind of here. So I just want to shape that part there while not going too far down here. And I'm using the fine taper burr there from Kutzall, and if you wanted to help the channel out and save 5% as well, you can follow the link in the description, and now it is an affiliate link, which essentially means I get a percentage of the money you pay, but you also get 5% off, so it doesn't cost you anything extra. Okay, so you can see we've put sort of like those channels in there which relate to sort of those kind of channels there, but now we've got to sort of like put this bit in here, so that will sort of go sort of goes, you want to be a bit generous at the start, sort of like that. Those are way too big, but as you can see, we make them big and then we can refine them. Okay, what are we up to now? So we're starting to get that look formed there, that little nostril going around there. So that's the nostril there going around there, but you can sort of see the cheek sort of goes in a little bit like that. So we can actually start to think about the mustache now, and just so we can put it in, so we can start taking the bottom of the nose down. So if we looked at like a side profile of this, you can sort of see the mustache. This is just the way I do it. It sort of comes out, and the nasal is actually a little bit further back. So what we want to do is probably look at about there, and sort of mustache going like down like that. So you can start to get rid of all of this material. So you can see the sort of like the mustache happening there. What you want to do as well is you don't want this area flat. It should be falling away like that. So carving the nose is all about these transitions. So we've got this transition up here, this transition going into here. We're going to have, once we've started off, that bottom nasal bit, that transition going around there. It's really deep in there. And this kind of like goes up a little bit here. It's really, really complex, but if we start sort of just doing the transitions, it kind of forms itself. And I think, you know, for me, I kind of think a lot of people say you just carry on, you just practice, practice, practice. And I think that's great advice, but you've also got to sort of go back to basics sometimes, because if you practice the nose wrong for like 50 times, you're going to be doing that nose wrong for a very long time after that. So if you don't get the nose right, you know, just go back to square one and sort of like try and figure out where you're going wrong. You might try and start getting that moustache in. So, you know, it's funny because when you say I'm going to carve a nose, I sort of like carve the nose, but I have to carve the moustache to figure out how the nose is going to go and how far it's going to sit back. So you sort of like look at it like that. I always think, you know, carving things in isolation is actually quite difficult because we don't know where, sort of like you need these transitions to make the nose work and to understand how the nose works as well. And we're just going to put in where the mouth is going to kind of go, and it's kind of where which forms the mustache. So we'll just put that in, and I'm just going to go over with that kutzall fine taper burr and just sort of start refining things and sort of start to go a little bit deeper around the back of the nose, sort of into that area there, and just sort of try and work out how those kind of nasal things are going to work out. I might put in a real deep kind of area right where it is right there. You can sort of see that forming the bottom of the cheek as well. And I like to keep the bottom of the nose quite flat and then shape the nasal parts sort of like a little bit rounded and going up into a V. A lot of people will start off with a V, and but this is all personal kind of how you carve, but like for me, I like to keep it flat and then sort of develop the V later on, so I can sort of develop it in a way that suits the face. And really, by not carving that V, it's sort of just giving you more options on the bottom of the nose. Yeah, so I'm just sort of really just finding tuning things now. It sort of takes a really long time. I would sort of still consider this just blocking out. These wood spirits do take a long time. A lot of people sort of like do them very quickly, and that's all good if that's your gig. That's cool. But I like to take my time, and I just try and understand things as I go along. I am a slow carver, but I enjoy carving, so it doesn't really worry me if I sort of like do up to this point one day and then leave it for the next day and I'll have a think about it. And also coming back to a carving, you can sort of like see where things are going wrong and all of that. I'm not entered any competitions for speed carving, that's for sure. So we can sort of see the nose really taking shape now. So now it's really about sort of like deciding on, do I think the nose is too short? Maybe it's a little bit too short, but because we've got a little bit of space up here, we can move this brow line up a little bit as well. So we don't need to do it much. Go up a bit there and then take that back. So that's the best way of like lengthening the nose. So we haven't over committed with the eyes or anything like that. They will be quite easy to fix. But it's not too far out. I think that's looking pretty good. These probably need narrowing out a little bit, but I think I will leave them for now and just concentrate on these transitions and sort of show you that. But we're not going to carve the whole thing today. We're just sort of like showing you the nose and sort of how to get that started. Okay, so when it comes to making the nose longer, this is probably the only way you can actually do it. You wouldn't want to increase it too much, so otherwise all the proportions are going to be kind of weird. But it's not too bad on a wood spirit. You can get away with quite a lot. So essentially you're just sort of like lengthening the nose up into the forehead and then sort of like heightening the eyes as well and just maybe reshaping the bottom of the eye a little bit. Okay, so let me know in the comments what you think of this kind of video, sort of like the video that kind of goes into quite a lot of detail on how to carve a face. And you can sort of see the nostril is bending back on itself, that outside part, that's what you kind of want it to do, but we will also refine that as well. Okay, so it's looking pretty good. We've got a little bit of depth and there, and this eyes are sort of being left. I'm not too worried about the shape of the eyes just at the moment, as long as I've got some wood there to play with. As you can see, these are quite deep, these eyes and this one. To focus, yeah, so they're quite deep. So we've still got a long way to go on these ones. They need to be a lot deeper in there. But you're sort of getting the idea. You've got the nose sort of like in the middle there, and you've got the sort of like bulb under the nose, that bit there. And these are coming back like this, down like this. They still need refining, and that will sort of like, you don't want that sort of like pointy like that. But what you don't want to do, I haven't already done it here, it kind of looks a little bit like it. You don't want to put the nasal passages in, because if you do that, what happens is you cannot take this further back that way. So as soon as you put big holes in here, that sort of limits your options. So until you sort of like start finishing the all the face, you do not want to put those holes in. And I'm using a round tipped kind of cylinder burr from Kutzall. You could also use a sphere burr here. I'm virtually, what I'm doing here is I'm just sort of like lightly touching it and sort of really sort of refining the shapes now. And this will probably be the end of this part. You can sort of see the end of the nose is looking pretty good, and the eyes are looking kind of weird, but I'll probably just flatten those out for next time, and we will probably tackle the eyes in the next one. There you go, flatten them out a little bit there. It looks so disturbing. So yeah. Okay, so that is end of part 1, and I will see you in part 2 where we will carry on with this wood spirit.